I never imagined my life would unravel the way it did. Quietly at first, like a loose thread slipping from a sweater, and then all at once until everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the future snapped apart. My name is Daniel Reed, and until last year, I lived what most people would call a stable, ordinary life in Portland, Oregon. I had a steady job as a logistics coordinator for a regional shipping company, a modest but comfortable apartment overlooking the Willamette River, and a fiancée, Emily, who for 5 years had been the center of every plan I made. We met during a corporate volunteer event, sorting food donations in a warehouse that smelled like cardboard and canned beans. She laughed at everything that day, at my jokes, at her own clumsiness, at the older volunteer who kept trying to set us up even though we were already flirting. Her laugh stayed with me long after the event ended, like an echo I wasn't ready to let go of. For years, I believed she was the person I would build a life with, the one who made my days feel softer and my fears a little smaller. But life has a strange way of hiding the truth in plain sight, sometimes stitching it into the corners of ordinary moments where you're least likely to look. Maybe that's why I didn't notice the subtle changes right away. The late nights at her office, the sudden silences in the car, the mysterious weekend team retreats that never produced any photos. I chalked it all up to stress, to ambition, to the way people sometimes drift in and out of closeness without realizing it. Looking back, I can see the signs scattered everywhere, like breadcrumbs I ignored. Still, nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the night everything shifted. The night that started with a missed phone call and ended with a discovery so sharp it felt like someone had taken a razor to the life I'd been building. What happened afterward? Well, that's a story that requires patience. A story of betrayal, yes, but also of coincidences so unlikely that even now, when I lay them out end to end, part of me wonders if some hidden force nudged them into place. Not magic, nothing supernatural, just the kind of eerily perfect timing that reminds you the universe can be disturbingly precise when it wants to be. And so this is how it begins. The night my life split into before and after. Let me tell you what happened. The night it all began didn't look suspicious at first. It was a Thursday, one of those gray Portland evenings when the sky hangs low, threatening rain without fully committing. I had stayed late at work, buried under a shipping backlog that seemed to regenerate every time I caught up. By the time I got to my car, the parking lot was nearly empty, echoing with the distant hum of the freeway. I texted Emily on my way out. Me. Done for the day. Want me to pick up dinner? Normally she replied within seconds, even if just with an emoji or a quick, yes, please. But minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Nothing. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was still in a meeting, or driving, or had her phone on silent. Emily was an executive assistant at one of the city's tech startups, a job that demanded long hours and endless multitasking. Radio silence wasn't unheard of, but what was unusual was the call I received instead, one that came from her number at 7:12 p.m. I answered immediately. Emily, I said. At first all I heard was static, like someone had brushed the microphone against fabric. Then, strangely, a man's voice, low and muffled, saying something I couldn't make out. It wasn't hostile, but it also wasn't background noise. It sounded deliberate, like he was close to the phone. Then the call dropped. I stared at my screen, confused. I tried calling back. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. A coil of unease twisted in my gut, subtle but unmistakable. When I got home, the apartment was dark. Emily's car wasn't in the parking lot. I heated leftover pasta, pretending the emptiness didn't bother me, and settled onto the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. At 9:44 p.m., Emily finally texted back. Emily, sorry, crazy day. Phone died. Going home now. Short, uncharacteristically so. I almost replied with something lighthearted. No worries. Want me to stay up? But something held me back. Instead, I just typed okay. She didn't get home until after 11 p.m. When she walked in, her hair was slightly damp from the drizzle outside, and she carried the faint scent of a cologne I didn't recognize. Something musky, sharper than anything she'd ever worn. She kissed my cheek, smiled tiredly, and disappeared into the bathroom before I could ask anything. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. People borrow cologne, share taxis, sit close in crowded spaces. It meant nothing. But early the next morning, as I stepped outside to leave for work, I noticed something on the passenger seat of her car. A navy blue jacket. Men's. Size large. Not mine. Not her father's. Something in my chest tightened. So suddenly and so sharply it felt like my own body was warning me before my mind caught up. I didn't open the car. I didn't touch the jacket. I simply stood there staring through the window, hearing the distant caw of a crow somewhere above the parking lot. And in that strangely still moment, a truck driving past on the street hit a pothole at the exact second I blinked, sending a spray of muddy water across the pavement that splashed right up onto Emily's car door, streaking the glass and distorting my reflection. A tiny, insignificant coincidence. But somehow it felt like the universe deliberately underlining something I didn't want to read. All day at work, the image of that navy blue jacket clung to my mind like a stain I couldn't scrub out. I tried to focus on shipment invoices and routing spreadsheets, but every time my eyes landed on the page, the lines blurred into the silhouette of that damn coat. The more I thought about it, the harder I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it belonged to a coworker who'd gotten chilly. Maybe she had picked up dry cleaning and forgotten to bring it inside. Maybe there was an explanation that didn't end with my fiancé in someone else's arms. But every excuse felt thinner than the last. Around lunchtime, I gave up pretending to be productive. I stepped outside the office, the sky a bright, deceptive blue that made everything feel too sharp. My phone buzzed. It was Emily. Emily. Dinner together tonight? I want to talk about wedding dates. For a moment, I just stared at the message, stunned. My heart did a weird somersault, half hope, half dread. The timing was almost eerie. After last night, after the call from her number with a stranger's voice, after finding a man's jacket in her car, why today of all days did she suddenly want to talk about our wedding? It felt scripted, convenient, like a distraction. Still, I replied, me. Sure, what time? Emily. 6. I'll cook. Emily offering to cook after a 10-hour workday was unusual. She loved food but hated cooking, claimed it stressed her out. This only deepened the unease that had been haunting me since morning. When I got home that evening, the smell of garlic and basil drifted through the apartment. Emily stood at the stove, stirring a pot of pasta sauce, her hair tied up, her movements calm, almost too calm. Hey, babe, she said, smiling. How was work? I watched her for a moment before responding. Nothing about her looked guilty. She seemed relaxed, cheerful, warm, the woman I knew. And yet, something felt staged, as if the warmth were rehearsed. It was fine, I said, taking a seat at the kitchen counter. Hey, quick question. Whose jacket was in your car this morning? Her stirring spoon froze midair. For exactly 1 second. 1 second too long. Oh, she said with a quick laugh. That? It's my coworker Tyler's. He forgot it during a team outing last week. I said I'd return it. Her answer was immediate, smooth, polished, too ready. I watched her, studying every twitch of her face. A team outing, huh? What kind of outing? She blinked, just once. Just a casual thing after work. Drinks and appetizers. I told you about it. She hadn't. I knew she hadn't. I remembered every plan she mentioned. Her schedule was practically memorized in my head. You probably forgot, she added casually, turning back to the stove. Maybe she believed I would accept that, but something in me hardened. Right, must have slipped my mind. We ate dinner while discussing wedding dates, but I barely heard a word she said. She seemed overly enthusiastic, almost forcefully cheerful. And at one point, when she reached across the table to take my hand, her phone, lying face down, vibrated. A message preview flashed briefly. Just a name. Tyler. I couldn't see the message itself, but I didn't need to. My appetite vanished. Emily noticed my sudden silence and squeezed my hand. You okay? Yeah, I lied. But inside something was shifting. Something quiet, heavy, dangerous. After dinner, while she showered, I checked the code again. I'd told myself earlier not to touch it, but now I needed answers. I slipped into the parking lot, opened her car, and pulled the jacket into the evening light. There was nothing in the pockets, except for one thing, a receipt from a hotel bar, dated the same night as her supposed team outing. 2 drinks, 1 appetizer, 2 people. The bartender's name was scrawled at the bottom, along with something else, something that made my blood run cold. Always good to see you two. For a long moment, I just stood there, the breeze drifting cold across my neck. And then, because the universe has a twisted sense of timing, a moth flew straight into my eye, making me stumble back and drop the receipt. I cursed under my breath, scrambling to snatch the paper before the wind could take it. I got it, barely, just as a gust lifted it an inch off the ground. I stared at the receipt again. Good to see you two. Two, not a group, not a team. Two. And in that instant, everything inside me aligned into one sharp truth. Emily was lying, and I needed proof. I didn't sleep that night. Emily fell asleep almost instantly, her breathing deep and even, like someone who had no reason in the world to feel unsettled. Meanwhile, I lay on my back staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the past 48 hours. The call with the man's voice, the late-night arrival, the strange cologne, the jacket, the receipt. Most people think betrayal hits all at once, like a car crash. But for me, it seeped slowly into my veins like poison. Every thought, every memory, every tiny detail suddenly tilted, casting different shadows than before. By 3 a.m., I made a decision. If Emily was cheating on me, I would find out, with absolute certainty. And when I did, revenge would come naturally. The next morning, I left for work early, quietly. I slipped out before her alarm rang, before I had to see her sleepy smile or feel the guilt she hadn't earned tug at my chest. The sky was just beginning to lighten as I drove away, but something about the morning felt heavier than usual, like the day knew something I didn't. On my lunch break, I visited the hotel bar listed on the receipt. It was one of those upscale places with polished floors and dim lighting even at noon. The kind of bar where every drink costs more than it should. The bartender on duty wasn't the same one who'd signed the receipt, but he seemed friendly enough. "Hey," I said, taking a seat. "Is Carla working today?" He glanced at the roster taped under the counter. "Not till 5. Want to leave a message?" "No," I said quickly. "I'll come back." He nodded, already unimpressed. I returned after work, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. The place was busier now, soft jazz playing, low conversations drifting through the air. I sat at the bar pretending to browse the menu. Carla approached me a minute later. Early 40s, sharp eyes, the kind of person who noticed things. "What can I get you?" she asked. I pulled out the receipt and placed it on the counter. "Actually, I'm here about this." She looked at it, then at me. "Ah, Daniel, right?" My stomach plummeted. "What?" She tapped the paper. "Emily mentioned your name. Said you were her fiancé." A cold wave rolled through me, slow, suffocating. Emily talked about me at this hotel bar. With him. "Look," I said carefully, "I just need to know, the night you wrote this, how many people were with her?" Carla hesitated, biting her lip. That alone told me more than words. "Just her and the guy," she finally said. "They come in every couple of weeks." She said they were co-workers, but that's not how they act. My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "You don't hold hands with co-workers," she said flatly. "Not the way they did." I swallowed hard. Carla leaned in a little, lowering her voice. "You're not the first partner I've had come looking for answers. I can't tell you everything, but I can tell you they weren't here for business." I felt something in me snap, quietly like a branch breaking under snow. "Can you tell me what he looked like?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "Tall, blonde, maybe early 30s. Works in tech, I think. He always orders that overpriced raspberry cider we keep behind the counter." It was him, Tyler, the name I'd seen on her phone screen. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the confirmation wash over me. It was one thing to suspect, another to know. But Carla wasn't finished. One more thing, she said almost reluctantly. Something odd. I opened my eyes. What? She glanced around, then lowered her voice to a whisper. They always sit at the same table. Same drinks, same days, same order, like clockwork. But last week, just before they left, your fiancé dropped something. My heart lurched. Dropped what? Carla reached under the counter and placed something small and silver in front of me. A key, specifically a hotel room key, to a room in the same building, room 614. And that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the small engraving scratched into its surface. E+T. My blood turned to ice. They said they didn't need it, Carla continued quietly, and left in a hurry. But she hesitated, and then the eerie coincidence unfolded. 5 minutes after they walked out, the fire alarm went off. The entire building evacuated. They disappeared in the chaos. A fire alarm. Exactly 5 minutes later. Not longer. Not sooner. As if someone, or something, had timed it perfectly to erase their tracks. No magic. No supernatural forces. Just an unbelievably precise, terrifyingly convenient coincidence. I stared at the key. And in that moment, I made another decision. I would find out everything. Every lie, every detail. And when the truth was fully in my hands, Emily and her lover would understand what betrayal felt like. Not through violence, not through rash emotion, through something far more calculated. My revenge would be deliberate, methodical, and unforgettable. Most people would have thrown the room key away, or confronted their partner immediately, or drowned themselves in alcohol and denial. But I'm not most people. I slipped the key into my pocket, thanked Carla with a stiffness I could barely control, and walked out of the hotel bar into the cool Portland night. The air smelled faintly of rain on concrete, that signature Oregon scent that always felt grounding. Tonight, though, it did nothing to steady me. Room 614. The number pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat. Emily and Tyler, E+T. It was one thing to suspect an affair, another to have a physical key to the place where it happened. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I walked around the block twice, thinking through every possible reaction Emily could have if I confronted her too early. She would deny it, cry, apologize, gaslight, or worse, turn the blame on me. No, I needed more. Proof wasn't just power, it was protection against lies, manipulation, excuses. So instead of going home, I walked straight through the hotel's main doors. The same hotel from the receipt, the same hotel with room 614. The lobby was quiet, just a few travelers checking in, a security guard scrolling through his phone, and an elderly couple arguing about whether they had forgotten a charger. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious, which made what I was about to do feel strangely ordinary. I took the elevator up to the 6th floor. The doors opened to a hallway lined with soft lighting and beige carpet that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The air smelled faintly of lavender-scented cleaner. Room 601, 603, 607. My pace slowed as I approached 604. My pulse echoed in my ears. My hand brushed the key in my pocket. Before sliding it into the lock, I glanced around. Empty hall. Silence thick enough to taste. I turned the key. It clicked. The door swung open with a soft mechanical sigh. Inside, the room was immaculate. Freshly made bed, perfectly folded towels, a TV screen glowing faintly with the hotel's default welcome menu. Housekeeping had clearly been here since the last time they used it. Still, I stepped in and closed the door behind me. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing in the faint scent of lemon cleaner and stale air. It felt wrong to be in this space. Wrong because it wasn't mine, and wrong because I knew exactly what had happened here. I walked slowly around the room, studying everything, looking for anything they might have left behind: a stray earring, a receipt, a wrapper, a forgotten piece of clothing. Nothing. Of course, there was nothing. People don't leave evidence when they think they're being careful, and Emily was very, very careful. Still, the room unsettled me. The silence felt thick, unnatural, like it was holding its breath. And then something bizarre happened. A faint tapping sound came from the window. I turned sharply. Tap, tap, pause, tap. I approached slowly, half expecting a branch or rain, but when I pulled back the curtains, I froze. On the narrow ledge outside the sixth-floor window was a business card, pressed against the glass as if placed there by hand, though the window was sealed shut. A business card that read, Tyler Hargrove, Senior Systems Analyst, Apex Solutions. His name, his workplace, his card. On the back, scribbled in quick handwriting, if you need to reach me, use this number. My jaw clenched. Why was this here? On a sealed window? On the sixth floor? And timed so perfectly that I discovered it the first time I entered the room? There was no logical explanation that didn't rely on a chain of unlikely events. Someone must have left it during cleaning, but why? And why now? Why today? But I didn't believe in supernatural coincidences, just improbable ones. And this one was nearly impossible. Still, I pocketed the card. Because improbable or not, it was a gift. A direct line to the man who had torn apart my life. I checked the rest of the room carefully, but found nothing else unusual. The place was pristine, sanitized, erased. When I finally stepped back into the hallway and locked the door, I felt something inside me harden. A sense of direction, cold and sharp. I had the key. I had the room number. I had the bartender's account. I had Tyler's business card. And I had enough suspicion to ignite something destructive. But suspicion wasn't enough. Revenge required certainty. As I walked toward the elevator, my phone vibrated. A text from Emily. Emily, miss you. Can't wait to see you tonight. The worst part? If I hadn't known the truth, those words would have made me feel loved. Instead, they made me feel sick, and even more determined. When I reached the lobby, something else unexpected happened. As I crossed the marble floor toward the exit, a man brushed past me, shoulder to shoulder. Harder than necessary, almost intentional. Sorry, he murmured, but when I turned to look at him, he was already walking away, his face obscured by the collar of his coat. What I did see was the logo embroidered on his sleeve. Apex Solutions, Tyler's company. What were the odds? What were the chances he was here, on the same night I came, or someone who worked with him, or someone connected to Emily? The universe once again felt too precise. As the glass doors slid open for me, I realized I was no longer chasing answers. I was being pulled toward them. And I wasn't stopping. Not now. Not ever. That night, I drove home with the kind of numb focus you get after witnessing something traumatic. Half aware of the road, half lost inside your own head. The city lights streaked across the windshield like blurred memories. And by the time I reached the apartment complex, my pulse was still uncomfortably fast. Emily's car was already there. A single light glowed from inside our apartment, her favorite floor lamp by the couch. The one she always turned on when she wanted the place to feel warm and lived in. I wasn't ready to face her. Not yet. I sat in my car for a few minutes, gripping the steering wheel, replaying the events at the hotel in my mind. Room 614, Tyler's business card, the bartender's confirmation, the Apex Solutions logo on that stranger's coat, the impossible coincidence of timing. It felt like I'd stepped into a meticulously choreographed sequence, a series of events lined up too cleanly to be random. And yet none of it was supernatural, just absurdly unlikely, uncomfortably precise. When I finally walked inside, Emily looked up from the couch with an easy smile. "You're home late," she said. "Work stuff?" I nodded, forcing a neutral expression. "Yeah, long day." She set aside the blanket she'd been wrapped in. "Want leftovers? I kept some pasta for you." I told her I wasn't hungry. We talked a little, small, meaningless things. But she watched me more closely than usual, like she sensed something off. I kept my tone steady, my face calm. I'd learned long ago that people lie not by masking emotion, but by controlling it too tightly. I needed to appear tired, not tense, distracted, not suspicious. Still, the tension between us simmered, subtle but undeniable. At one point, she moved to sit next to me on the couch, resting her head on my shoulder. Normally, I would have wrapped my arm around her without thinking. Tonight it felt unnatural, but I did it anyway, because patience was a weapon. When she eventually fell asleep curled against me, her breathing soft and steady, I eased away and slipped into the kitchen. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second, panic stabbed through me. What if it was her phone instead? What if she woke up? But it was mine. A text from an unknown number. If you want the truth, follow the patterns. Start with Tuesday nights. I froze. I read the message 3 more times. Start with Tuesday nights. Emily often worked late on Tuesdays, always with the same excuse: weekly executive reports, late meetings, last-minute crises. It was the one day she was never home before 9 p.m. Was that when she met him? Before I could reply, the number went offline. No profile picture, no name, no way to trace it. The timing was too perfect to ignore. Another impossible coincidence, but also a lead. I spent the next hour quietly searching online for anything publicly available about Tyler Hargrove. LinkedIn profiles, company bios, conference photos. I found more than I expected. He was exactly the type of man Emily would be drawn to. Successful, polished, confident in a way that hinted at charm and manipulation intertwined. I memorized his face. Then I dove into deeper searches, articles, mentions, archive posts, anything. And that's when I stumbled onto something strange. A forum thread from 3 years ago, buried, forgotten, but still indexed online. Someone asking about Tyler, someone warning others to stay away, someone claiming he'd been involved in workplace affairs before, leaving damage behind. The thread was short, vague, and abruptly ended. But one reply stood out. If he approaches someone in a relationship, he targets patterns, routine schedules, predictable gaps. He's meticulous. Almost freakishly so. Patterns. Tuesday nights. My blood ran cold. I sat there in the dim kitchen, illuminated only by the soft glow of the refrigerator light I'd forgotten to close, surrounded by the quiet of a home that no longer felt safe. Emily wasn't asleep on the couch anymore. When I noticed her absence, a chill ran down my spine. Then she appeared in the doorway, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. "Danny, what are you doing up?" she murmured. "Just couldn't sleep," I said, closing the fridge. She nodded slowly, then stepped closer. Too close. She pressed her forehead to my chest. The coffee shop was small, almost cozy, tucked between a flower shop and a vintage record store on 12th Avenue. It smelled faintly of espresso, roasted nuts, and something sweet that reminded me of childhood mornings, almost too normal for the chaos I was expecting. I arrived at 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. I ordered a black coffee, no sugar, no milk. My hands shook slightly, but I told myself it was from anticipation, not fear. Margaret Dalka was already inside. She sat near the back, tucked in a corner by a fogged-up window. Short brown hair, glasses sliding down her nose, a nervous habit of tapping her fingers on the table. Something about her radiated urgency and fear. Real fear. Not the kind people put on for effect, but the kind that lives in your chest and makes your stomach ache. She glanced up at the door as I entered, eyes widening. Recognition. Relief. Something that made her whole body stiffen, like a spring coiled tight. "Daniel Reed?" she asked in a low voice when I approached. "Yes," I said, sitting across from her. "You're Margaret?" "That's right," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." I studied her for a moment, trying to gauge if this was a trap or worse, a lie. But her hands, shaking as they clutched the coffee cup, betrayed her sincerity. "I don't know what you want," I said, leaning back, "or why you're telling me anything, but start talking." Margaret nodded quickly. "I work at Apex Solutions. Tyler, he's not just a coworker of Emily's. He's involved in a side project, something illegal, financial fraud, embezzlement. I only found out recently because I handle internal audits, and I saw Emily there more than once." My chest tightened. Emily? Involved? Not just in an affair, but something bigger? I leaned forward. "How do you know? And why are you telling me this?" She hesitated, glancing around like someone might be watching, then whispered, Because Tyler is reckless. He's sloppy. And he's not the only one who notices patterns. That hotel, the receipts, the fire alarm, those were all close calls. Too close. And he's using Emily in ways she doesn't even realize. Using her? I asked. How? Margaret lowered her voice even more. She's She's been manipulated into helping him cover tracks. She doesn't know it fully, but she's been bringing him documents, data, things that make him untouchable. Tyler's smart, but Emily, she's smart too, and he counts on her loyalty to get away with things. I stared at her, my hands clenched into fists on the table. I wanted to shout. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw the coffee cup against the wall. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Where is she now? Margaret's gaze flicked toward the window, as if she could see the answer outside. Room 614, the hotel, and Tyler. Together. Alone. I swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at me. Confront them now. But another voice, cooler, sharper, reminded me of the key. The photos, the patterns, the impossible coincidences. Revenge wasn't a scream. It wasn't a punch. It was strategy, precision, calculation. I stood. Show me how to get there without being seen. Margaret's eyes widened. I can't go with you, but I can give you the building layout. Emergency stairways, service entrances, cameras, everything you need. I nodded. My pulse had a rhythm now, a rhythm that matched the plan forming in my head. The patterns were coming together. Threads were pulling themselves into place. Emily and Tyler thought they were careful. They weren't ready for what was about to unfold. And in that moment, I realized something terrifyingly clear. I wasn't just chasing betrayal anymore. I was stepping into a web of coincidences and timing so precise, it almost felt orchestrated. And I would use it. Every single impossible detail, every accidental overlap, every eerie coincidence would be my weapon. Because tonight, the line between revenge and justice would blur. And I would be the one holding the pen. I left the coffee shop with Margaret's handwritten notes tucked in my jacket pocket. The moment the cool Portland air hit my face, my mind sharpened into something cold and strangely focused. Everything I'd learned in the past 24 hours pressed down on me at once. Emily's lies, Tyler's manipulation, the shady schemes at Apex Solutions, the eerie coincidences that kept lining up with almost cinematic precision. Most people would have fallen apart by now, but I felt steady, almost frighteningly calm. Maybe because betrayal doesn't just wound. You either drown in it or use it to breathe underwater. I headed straight to my car and spread Margaret's notes across the passenger seat. She had drawn the 6th floor of the hotel with impressive accuracy. Elevators, service corridors, emergency exits, stairwells, surveillance angles, even approximate staff shift rotations. She hadn't been lying. She really was scared, and she had reason to be. Somewhere distant, I heard the rhythmic beeping of a floor polisher, and above that, a cart rolling. Room service. I checked my watch. 7:27 p.m., right on schedule. I crouched near the corner, peeking out into the main hall. The room service waiter, young, distracted, earbuds in, pushed a tray with a covered plate and a wine bottle chilling in ice. Tyler's usual order. When the waiter turned into the hallway leading to room 614, I followed silently, staying several paces behind. My plan depended on timing, one small window of opportunity. The waiter stopped at the door, knocked twice, and announced, "Room service." The door cracked open. I heard a male voice, Tyler's, muffled by distance. Perfect. As the waiter and Tyler spoke, I slipped into the recessed alcove just beside the door, hidden from both of them. I reached into my pocket and felt the hotel key card, smooth, cold, like a secret waiting to be used. I just needed a few seconds, just enough for the door to open fully. Then it happened. A voice I knew better than my own drifted out from inside the room. Emily, laughing. Not a nervous laugh, not a forced laugh. A laugh I hadn't heard in weeks. One she hadn't shared with me in months. It hit me like a punch to the ribs, but it also strengthened something in me. The resolve, the steel, the clarity. I listened as she said, "Tyler, you didn't have to order room service. We could have gone downstairs." He replied, "Why? When we have the whole night to ourselves." I felt my jaw clench, but I stayed silent, focused, ready. Then the door opened wider so the waiter could bring in the tray. That was my moment. I slid the key card into the lock, just enough to capture the RFID signature. The recorder in my other hand clicked on with a tiny, almost inaudible beep. Evidence, leverage, the future. Then I stepped back into the shadows as the waiter rolled the cart inside. The door remained open for 2 full seconds, just long enough for me to glimpse the edge of the bed, the wine glasses, the dim lights, and the silhouette of my fiancée in another man's arms. The door closed. Silence settled, and I exhaled slowly, deliberately. I had everything I needed to begin. Tonight wasn't the confrontation. Tonight was reconnaissance. Revenge wasn't a single blow. It was a process, and I was just getting started. I stayed in that shadowed alcove for almost a full minute after the door shut, long enough for the waiter to wheel his now empty cart away, and long enough for my breathing to steady again. The hallway felt colder now, sharper, as if the hotel itself understood the shift inside me. I wasn't just a betrayed man anymore. I was a man gathering ammunition. When the coast was clear, I slipped back toward the service corridor, backpack pressed tightly against my shoulder. I didn't walk fast. Fast draws attention. I walked like an employee, like someone who belonged. My heart hammered inside my ribs, but my footsteps were casual, almost lazy. Once I reached the blind spot near the laundry chute, the one Margaret had emphasized, I stepped inside and finally allowed myself to breathe. I took out the portable RFID skimmer. Its screen blinked awake, showing a green confirmation. Success, key data, cloned. The card Tyler had given Emily, the one she used to walk in and out of her secret life. I now had its digital ghost, copied like a stolen fingerprint. But that was only part of what I'd come for tonight. I pulled out the recorder next. The tiny LED blinked red, recording everything around me. I rewound it slightly, listening through the earpiece. Emily's laugh, Tyler's voice, the waiter confirming the order, the clink of glasses, fragments of their conversation, low, intimate, unmistakable. It wasn't the affair I needed proof of. I didn't care about proving heartbreak. I cared about proving something far more valuable. That Emily was inside room 614 on nights Tyler conducted whatever illegal business he was hiding behind dinner plates and hotel invoices. That she wasn't just a bystander, she was present. In law and corporate policy, presence was everything, and leverage was built not on emotion, but on timelines. I fast-forwarded. At one point, Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible but clear enough when I pressed the recorder closer to my ear. "Did you bring the files?" My stomach tightened. Emily's answer came softly. "They're in my bag. I didn't have time to scan all of them, but it should be enough for you to finish the report." A pause, then Tyler's smile was practically audible. "Perfect. You're saving me again." Report, files, enough for him to finish. It was exactly what Margaret had warned me about. Emily wasn't only betraying me, she was participating knowingly or unknowingly in something illegal. Fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage. Whatever it was, she was tangled in it, and now so was I. But unlike her, I understood the stakes. "You're always so stressed lately," she whispered, and in that moment I realized something chilling. Either she was a world-class liar, or she truly believed she could hide everything. Her warmth felt suddenly toxic. I guided her gently back to bed, pretending nothing was wrong, pretending I wasn't holding a phone with a message that could unravel her entire web of lies. She fell asleep within minutes. I stood in the hallway, watching her in the faint glow from the nightlight she insisted on keeping. The woman I loved. The woman I thought I'd marry. The woman who had no idea I'd already found the first loose thread. But what the message said, that wasn't the strangest part of the night. The strangest part came at 3:17 a.m., when I walked past the living room window and saw something on the hood of my car. Something reflecting the streetlight, a small object, a metallic glint. I stepped outside, heart pounding. On the hood was a second business card, from the same hotel. Blank, except for one handwritten phrase. The patterns don't stop at Tuesday. Impossible. No noise, no footsteps, no car pulling away, no one visible in the entire parking lot. Just the silent card sitting there, waiting for me. Someone was watching, someone who knew, someone who wanted me to keep digging. And I would, because I wasn't just searching for proof anymore. I was unraveling something far darker than an affair, and I had no idea how deep it went. By the time Tuesday rolled around, something inside me had changed. It wasn't anger. Not yet. Anger comes in loud, sharp bursts. What I felt now was cold, patient, and unnervingly clear, like the surface of a lake just before it freezes over. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't denying. I was planning. Emily kissed me goodbye that morning, like everything was normal. She smelled like the same lavender shampoo she always used. She smiled the same soft smile she'd given me for years. But behind that smile, I now saw patterns. Tuesday patterns, office late nights, delayed replies, dead phone batteries, meetings that never appeared on her public calendar. She even wore the necklace I bought her last Christmas, the one she forgot to wear for weeks afterward, almost like she was trying to play the role of the perfect partner. And I let her, because tonight I needed her to act exactly as she usually did. Around 6:15 p.m., she texted me, "Emily, running late again. Don't wait up. We're doing budget revisions for tomorrow's board meeting." Predictable, immediate, too smooth. She used the same excuse as always, and with that one message, my entire plan clicked into place. I waited 30 minutes, long enough for her to leave her office and settle into whatever routine she followed. Then I grabbed my jacket and keys and drove downtown. Not to her workplace, not to the hotel bar, but to her parking garage. It was a multi-level structure attached to the tech campus where her company was located. Employees needed a badge to enter, but leaving was unrestricted. I didn't need access inside. I only needed visibility. I parked across the street behind a coffee shop that had closed hours earlier. From this angle, I could see both the exit ramp and the sidewalk leading toward the main street. At 7:03 p.m., Emily's car rolled out, not toward the office building she claimed to be heading back into, not toward home, toward the city center. My pulse quickened, but my mind stayed calm, analytical. I followed at a reasonable distance, headlights off until absolutely necessary, staying a few cars back. Portland traffic made it easy to blend in. Emily eventually turned at a light, then another, then pulled into a familiar driveway. The hotel, the very same hotel attached to the bar where Carla worked. I parked half a block away and watched as Emily stepped out of her car. She checked her phone, looked around briefly, almost nervously, and then walked inside, alone, but only for a moment, because barely 2 minutes later, another car pulled up. Dark gray, new model, tinted windows. Tyler stepped out. Seeing him in person was a strange punch to the gut. I had memorized his face from photos, but photos don't prepare you for the reality of the man your fiancé is betraying you with. He looked exactly as I expected. Tall, confident, expensive haircut, a casual jacket that tried too hard to look effortless. He walked straight inside, as if he'd done it 100 times before. Maybe he had. I waited 2 minutes, then stepped out of my car and followed on foot. Inside, the lobby lighting was soft, warm, deceptively inviting. I spotted them immediately near the corner elevator. Emily laughing quietly at something Tyler said. Laughing in that way she used to with me years ago when everything was uncomplicated. I didn't let the emotion hit me. Emotion clouded judgment. Instead, I pulled out my phone, lifted it subtly, and captured 3 photos. One of Emily and Tyler standing together. One of their hands brushing as they talked. One of them entering the elevator side by side. Room 614. I already knew where they were going. I took the stairs. Quiet, focused, climbing fast without losing control. On the 6th floor, I waited at the far end of the hallway where I wouldn't be seen. I kept my breathing steady as their voices drifted out of the elevator. Emily giggled softly, a sound I hadn't heard from her in months. Then Tyler spoke. You really think he doesn't suspect anything? Emily replied, Danny? No. He trusts me too much. He trusts me too much. Those words carved something deep into me. So deep I didn't feel rage. I felt calculation. They walked past me, unaware of my presence, and their pace slowed as they reached room 614. The key card beeped. The door opened. They stepped inside. The door shut. I approached silently and slid the room key I had in the lock. It fit perfectly. I didn't turn it. Not yet. Instead, I leaned closer and listened. Muffled voices, laughter, movement, a soft thump, maybe a bag or jacket tossed aside. And then faintly, a sentence that made the air in the hallway turn ice cold. We need to be more careful. Last week was too close. Too close? My mind raced. Last week, the fire alarm. Had someone seen them? Had they nearly been caught by someone else? Or, and then the other possibility hit me. Had someone already been watching them? Long before I found out? Someone who left me clues? Someone who sent the anonymous texts? Someone who placed the business card on my car in the middle of the night? Someone who had a stake in this that I didn't yet understand? A strange ripple of dread and curiosity passed through me, because the puzzle pieces were no longer just pointing to an affair. Something larger was moving in the background, something orchestrated, something or someone that wanted me to keep digging. And tonight I would, because I wasn't done, not even close. I didn't go to work the next morning. I couldn't. My entire body felt like it had been hollowed out, every muscle buzzing with that nauseating mix of dread and adrenaline that comes after a night without sleep. But beneath the hurt, under the humiliation and disbelief, something else was starting to surface. Something steadier, sharper. Curiosity. Not the kind you feel when you overhear gossip or see an unfamiliar number on your partner's phone. No. This was the kind of curiosity that comes when you realize someone has been living a double life right beside you, breathing the same air, sharing the same bed. The kind that makes you want to peel back every layer of deception, even if the truth cuts you open. So instead of driving to the office, I sat at my kitchen table, staring out at the river while Emily's suitcase sat untouched in the hallway. I didn't know when she would come back, but I knew exactly how the conversation would go. She'd minimize. She'd lie. She'd weaponize tears. She'd pretend to be confused, pretend it was complicated, pretend she still loved me but wasn't sure anymore. I'd seen that performance in other couples. I never imagined it would be rehearsed for me. But maybe, just maybe, I could get answers before she even walked through the door. And that's when something strange happened. I opened my laptop intending to search for the hotel number or dig through old emails. But when the screen lit up, I saw a new message notification. Not from Emily, not from anyone I recognized, just a name I'd never seen before. Margaret Dalka. The subject line was even stranger. You don't know me, but we need to talk about Emily. My heart stopped. For a full 10 seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just stared at the screen as if blinking might make the message disappear. I clicked it open. The email was short, shockingly short. Daniel, I know you have no reason to trust me, and I'm sorry for contacting you this way, but you deserve to know the truth. Emily isn't who you think she is. I've been involved in something I deeply regret, and your fiancé is part of it. If you want answers, meet me today at 3 p.m. at Riverbend Coffee on 12th. Please come alone. No explanation, no details, no threats, just that. I reread the message at least 5 times, waiting for it to make sense. Who in the world was Margaret? What did she mean, involved in something? And how was Emily connected to her? The coincidences were piling up too perfectly. First the hotel, then the manager calling me Mr. Dalton. Now a mysterious woman reaching out of nowhere. If this were fiction, I'd say it was lazy writing. But this was real, and the timing was too precise to ignore. I checked the clock. 2:12 p.m. Riverbend Coffee was a 12-minute drive. I didn't even hesitate. This was the first thread. The one that, once pulled, would unravel everything. And I was ready to yank. Tyler wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal who hid behind charm and corporate jargon. and he'd pulled Emily into his orbit like a moth to a flame. But fires burn everything that gets too close. I memorized the map, then folded it neatly. My hands didn't shake, not anymore. It felt like something inside me had clicked into place, like I'd slipped into a role I didn't know I was capable of playing. The first step was timing. Margaret had said Tyler had a habit. He always ordered room service at 7:30 p.m. on nights he stayed at the hotel. Always the same thing. A steak, medium rare. A bottle of Malbec. Predictable. That made things easier. If I timed it right, I could slip in through the service hall while the delivery distracted him. The hotel key card, the one fate had conveniently placed in my hand, would handle the rest. I checked my watch, 5:42 p.m., just enough time to set the rest of the plan into motion. I drove home, avoiding the riverfront streets I usually loved. I didn't want to risk seeing Emily's car, or worse, running into her before I was ready. I needed control, options, an exit strategy if things went sideways. As soon as I stepped into the apartment, the silence felt heavier than usual. Emily's suitcases were still in the hallway, right where she'd left them. I didn't touch them, not yet. Instead, I grabbed the tools I needed. My spare phone, an old model with a cracked screen, but a working camera. A small digital recorder from my work kit. A pair of latex gloves. And something I never thought I'd use outside my job. A portable RFID skimmer I occasionally use to test warehouse keycards. Not for anything illegal, not until now. But if Emily and Tyler had plans, I needed leverage. Evidence. Proof that went beyond blurry photographs and vague suspicions. I packed everything into a plain black backpack and sat on the edge of my bed, thinking through every step, every angle, every risk. Then something strange happened. My phone buzzed with a new message. I expected Margaret, maybe the hotel manager again, maybe even a spam alert, but the sender froze my blood. Emily. Hey babe, just checking in. Sorry I've been so out of it lately. I hope we can talk tonight. I really miss you. I stared at the message, simple, sweet, perfectly normal, and a complete lie. The timing was uncanny, too perfect. She had never once apologized spontaneously in 5 years, let alone after disappearing for a night. It felt like the universe was placing pieces onto a board, daring me to make the next move. I typed back one sentence. Yeah, we'll talk tonight. A truth wrapped in a lie. Because yes, we would talk tonight, but not the way she expected. I zipped up the backpack, slipped on my jacket, and grabbed the hotel key card. My plan wasn't finished, not yet, but the wheels were already turning. And once momentum starts, it's almost impossible to stop. Tonight would be the first real step toward truth and revenge. By the time I reached the hotel again, the sun had already dipped below the skyline, leaving the city washed in the deep blues and purples of early evening. It was the kind of night that made Portland look almost peaceful, like nothing sinister could possibly happen here. But I knew better. I parked a block away, not wanting my car anywhere in the building's security logs. Every step I took toward the entrance felt heavier, charged with a kind of electric anticipation. Not fear, just the sharp awareness that whatever happened tonight would change everything. Inside, the lobby was warm and softly lit, the kind of place where people whispered instead of talked. A woman at the reception desk glanced up briefly, but I didn't make eye contact. I moved confidently as if I belonged there. That was half the trick. Act like a guest, and no one questions you. I bypassed the main elevators and headed for the service area at the rear of the building. Margaret's map had pointed out a side hallway where employees came and went, and sure enough, the door was ajar, propped open by a cleaning cart. Luck, or coincidence. At this point, I couldn't tell the difference. I slipped inside, the backpack slung over my shoulder, and found myself in a narrow corridor with buzzing fluorescent lights. A housekeeper pushed past me, too distracted by her phone to notice anything unusual, and disappeared around the corner. Good. I kept walking until I found the service elevator. According to Margaret's notes, the 6th-floor hallway between the laundry chute and the emergency stairwell had no cameras. Just a blind spot, one of those architectural mistakes hotels never bother fixing. exactly where I needed to be. The elevator ride up felt like it lasted an hour. My heart thudded, steady but powerful, like a drumbeat echoing through my entire body. Not nerves, focus. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty, just as Margaret had said. I stepped out, staying close to the wall, listening. Pipes hummed softly behind the drywall. I clicked the recorder off and slid it deep into the backpack, surrounded by clothes so no one would hear it if it accidentally turned on. Then I waited. Not for long, just enough time to think, to calibrate, to solidify the next steps. Because tonight wasn't about confrontation. Confrontation ends things. Tonight was about building. Building the kind of truth that couldn't be denied. Building a path toward justice or revenge, depending on what the evidence ultimately revealed. Building a version of events where I held the power. The strange coincidences weren't done with me yet. I felt that in my bones. There was still the hotel manager calling me Mr. Dalton, still the mysterious email from Margaret, still the perfect timing of Emily's text, still the two convenient blind spots in the hallway, still the strange feeling that every puzzle piece was sliding into place without me forcing it. It was like the universe had been nudging me toward this moment for weeks, and I had finally arrived. And I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Before I slipped away, I took one last move, one final calculated risk. I returned to the sixth-floor hallway, pulling my hoodie low over my forehead. I approached room 614 quietly, staying just out of the camera's view, and slid a tiny adhesive audio node, a sticky button-sized recorder, under the base of the molding near the floor. Invisible from above, hidden from anyone not crawling on their hands and knees, a long-duration device, it would record everything for days. One piece of evidence wasn't enough. I wanted their entire world. When I finally left the hotel through the service exit, the night air hit me like a slap, cold, heavy, and strangely invigorating. I walked back to my car feeling lighter, more dangerous, more certain. Revenge wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was a plan. A meticulous, calculated plan built on timing, coincidence, and the truth they didn't know I possessed. The first act was complete. Now the real story could begin. I didn't sleep that night, not because of the pain, though it was there, hollow and deep, like someone had carved out the center of my chest, but because my mind was working too quickly, connecting dots, replaying conversations, mapping out possibilities. People think grief slows you down, but betrayal, that speeds you up. By sunrise, I was sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by evidence, digital and physical, spread out like a detective's caseboard. The skimmer, the clone keycard, Margaret's notes, the recorder full of whispered conversations, and my own list of questions scribbled across a notepad in dark, heavy ink. What files had Emily stolen from Apex? How deeply was she involved? Was Tyler using her or partnering with her? And what exactly was I supposed to do with everything I now knew? As I stared at the mess in front of me, my phone buzzed again. Emily, of course. Her message was short. Good morning, I didn't make it home. Stayed with a friend. We'll talk tonight. I promise. A friend. The word twisted inside me. Not because of the lie, I no longer cared about that, but because it confirmed something more important. She wasn't ready to confess, which meant she was still hiding something. Good. The longer she lied, the sharper my advantage grew. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for Apex Solutions' internal scandals, rumors, news articles, lawsuits, anything that might hint at what Tyler was risking so much to protect. At first, nothing meaningful came up, standard corporate fluff. But then, buried 3 pages deep, I found something strange. A financial blog post from 6 months earlier. A leak, a whistleblower claim, an anonymous accusation. I clicked it open. The post was short but explosive, alleging that a mid-level manager at Apex was artificially inflating quarterly numbers, forging timestamps on large client transfers, and funneling the excess into a personal shell account. A name wasn't listed, but the blog author wrote something odd, almost poetic in the closing paragraph. Someone close to him knows the truth. She just hasn't realized it yet. My pulse stumbled. She. The coincidence was too eerie, too precise to ignore. It didn't name Emily. It didn't name anyone. But the phrasing, someone close to him, was the kind of vague yet specific language whistleblowers used when protecting sources, or when warning them. Had this whole thing been happening long before I noticed anything? Had Emily been pulled into Tyler's orbit, not just emotionally, but financially, legally? And more importantly, was she a pawn or a partner? I needed answers, real answers. And that meant going straight to the source. Not Tyler, not the company, but Margaret. She had risked something by contacting me, breaking rank, exposing herself. And she clearly knew more than she'd shared during our brief meeting at the coffee shop. I checked the time, 8:12 a.m. I doubted she'd be at work. Not after last night's secret rendezvous in a back corner booth, whispering corporate confessions over cold coffee. So I tried calling her. The phone rang twice before she picked up, voice shaky. "Daniel, are you safe?" Safe. The word made me pause. "I'm fine," I said slowly. "Margaret, I need more information. Whatever's happening at Apex, it's bigger than an affair. You know it. I know it." Silence on the other end. Heavy, meaningful. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't talk about this on the phone. They monitor everything." "Who monitors?" She inhaled sharply. "You need to come to my place, now. I'll explain, but Daniel, once you hear this, you won't be able to walk away." My grip tightened around the phone. "Give me the address." She hesitated, then read it out. A small apartment complex across the river. I knew the area. Quiet, older buildings. The kind of place where neighbors barely looked at each other. I grabbed my backpack, the evidence, the duplicate key card, everything, and headed for the door. But then something unusual happened. Just as I reached the hallway, I noticed something on the floor. A hotel envelope. Not mailed, not delivered by a carrier. Left by hand. My name written across the front in handwriting I recognized instantly. Emily's handwriting. I picked it up slowly, heart thudding. Inside was a single hotel invoice. Room 614, last night's date. 2 guests, dinner service, wine, and a note. Just 6 words. "We need to talk. Tonight." E. The coincidences, the timing, everything was aligning in a way that made my skin prickle. Something felt choreographed. Not by fate, not by chance, by someone with a plan. And it wasn't me. I folded the invoice, slipped it into my pocket, and locked the apartment door behind me. Because whatever this was, it was accelerating. And tonight wouldn't just be another step. Tonight would be the turning point. The ride to Margaret's apartment felt unnervingly quiet. Portland's streets were empty for the late morning rush, the sky an overcast gray that seemed to match the tension inside me. My backpack felt heavier than ever, loaded not just with equipment, but with months of suppressed suspicion, anger, and heartbreak. Margaret's building was small, tucked behind a row of aging brick facades. I parked across the street, my pulse steady but alert. Something about the place screamed privacy, the perfect setting for a conversation that could either solve everything or make things infinitely worse. I climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment and knocked softly. Moments later, the door opened just a crack, and Margaret's face appeared, pale and anxious. "Daniel," she whispered, stepping aside to let me in. "I didn't think you'd come alone." "I need the full story," I said, moving inside. "No sugarcoating, no delays." She nodded and led me to her small living room, where she had already laid out folders of documents, photographs, and printed emails. She gestured toward a chair, and I sat, my mind already scanning the materials. Margaret began to speak, her voice low and deliberate. "Tyler's not just manipulating Emily emotionally. He's using her to move money, conceal transactions, and cover up fraud. Apex Solutions is messy. He's careful, but he's sloppy in ways that most people wouldn't notice. Emily, she didn't realize it at first, but now she's part of it. And worse, someone higher up suspects." I listened, absorbing every detail. Emails showing Emily forwarding spreadsheets, internal memos she had unintentionally copied Tyler on, signatures and timestamps. The web was bigger than I imagined. Then Margaret said something that froze me. Daniel, I think Tyler knows you're on to him. Last night's coincidences, the cards, the messages, they weren't entirely random. Someone is guiding you, maybe even Tyler himself. I frowned, my mind spinning. The coincidences, the perfect timing, the placement of evidence, it suddenly all felt like part of a larger, more dangerous game. Margaret leaned closer. You have two choices. You can confront Emily tonight, alone, armed with what you know, or you can wait, gather more evidence, and hit Tyler where it hurts, legally, financially, but the longer you wait, the more careful he'll become. I let that sink in. My anger was strong, but my calculation had grown sharper. I realized then that tonight's confrontation wouldn't just be about betrayal, it would be about power, truth, and control. I stood, feeling the weight of the next hours pressing down. I'm going tonight, I said firmly. Emily deserves the truth. And Tyler, he'll see that I'm not just someone he can manipulate. Margaret nodded. Be careful. Timing is everything. And Daniel, trust the patterns. They'll guide you. As I left her apartment, clutching the folders, the sun broke through a brief crack in the clouds. I felt a chill run down my spine, not from the wind, but from the sense that the final act was about to begin. Tonight, the threads of betrayal, coincidence, and manipulation would collide, and I would be ready. Night fell fast, draping Portland in a dark velvet hush. I parked a few blocks from the hotel, backpack strapped securely, heart pounding, not with fear, but with a cold, precise anticipation. Every improbable coincidence, every odd timing, every clue I had uncovered led to this single point in time. Tonight, everything would either unravel or snap into place. I slipped inside the hotel through the service entrance, moving like a shadow. The halls were quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly above me. I didn't hesitate. Room 614, the epicenter of betrayal, was just ahead. The duplicate keycard in my hand felt heavier than any weapon I'd ever carried, and the recorders in my backpack reminded me that I held the truth in my grasp. I reached the sixth-floor hallway and crouched near the corner, peering around. The door to 614 was slightly ajar. I heard muffled voices, Emily and Tyler, arguing softly. Something about numbers, spreadsheets, and timing. But beneath it all, the tension of intimacy, lies, and fear wove together in a way that made my chest ache. I didn't announce myself. Instead, I stepped inside, letting the door swing gently behind me. They didn't see me at first, too absorbed in their world. Emily glanced up, surprised, but then froze when our eyes met. Tyler turned sharply, realization dawning almost instantly. You, he said, voice tight. How? You think I don't know? I cut in, voice cold. I know everything. Emily's face went pale. Tyler's expression hardened, the charm replaced by a taut edge. For a moment, the room seemed suspended, held in balance by the weight of secrets and the improbable coincidences that had led me here. I dropped the backpack onto the floor, letting the recorders click softly, recording everything. Evidence, power, leverage. Then I stepped closer, looking at Emily, not with rage, but with a clarity that burned. You were part of it, I said, not because you wanted to hurt me, but because you didn't see it clearly. And Tyler, you used her, manipulated her, and thought you could hide behind coincidences. But every one of them led me here. Tyler tried to argue to deflect, but I held up the duplicate key card. This opens every door you used, and everything you said and did, recorded, every impossible coincidence, every timing, every slip. You're cornered. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Not fear of Tyler, not guilt for the affair, but shock, realization. She understood then that I wasn't just a man scorned. I was a man who had traced every pattern, followed every improbable event, and turned luck, timing, and coincidence into justice. She whispered, voice shaking. I didn't mean to. I let her falter. Let her stumble over words that could never undo months of lies. But I didn't shout. I didn't strike. I just held the evidence between us, letting the truth press down like a weight that could not be lifted. Tyler, for the first time, looked genuinely afraid. And I realized something extraordinary in that moment. The improbable coincidences, the perfect timing, the near miraculous overlaps. They hadn't just led me here. They had orchestrated a reckoning. I turned to Emily. You need to make a choice. Own the truth or walk away. But don't hide behind lies anymore. Not tonight. Not ever. She nodded, trembling, her own awareness of the tangled web finally clear. Tyler's arrogance shattered, replaced by fear. The power in the room had shifted entirely. I left room 614 that night not just with proof, but with control, with clarity, with the knowledge that betrayal, no matter how intricately disguised through coincidences and careful timing, could be unraveled. Outside, the Portland night was quiet, as if the city itself had held its breath. The improbable events, the strange alignments, the almost impossible coincidences, they had all converged to this moment, and I had survived them all, not as a victim, not as a fool, but as someone who turned betrayal into understanding, chaos into order, and lies into truth. The reckoning was complete, and finally I felt a flicker of peace.